Hi everyone and welcome to Building Content Knowledge in Mathematics. My name is James, I'll be your host today, and today we're looking at skip counting. So our learning intention today is to build teacher understanding of skip counting, to explore a sequence of learning that could support students in their understanding of skip counting, and to make clear links between algebra and skip counting. So a sequence that I like to use, now everyone has a different way of doing things, but this is just the way that I go about it that I've known to be very impactful. So a skip counting sequence that I like to use is first developing pattern for students, developing those repeating patterns through copying, creating, and extending patterns. From there, I use that foundation to teach skip counting short call sequences, and then from there I teach skip counting of long call sequences. This will become clear as we go. So how do we develop these foundations of pattern for our students that we can use as an anchor for students to learn numerical skip counting sequences? And that's really what we're trying to do here. We're trying to develop really rich bodies of knowledge for our students. And how can we create and develop a strong understanding of pattern for our students to use as an anchor to teach numerical skip counting patterns? So first I like to start off with developing pattern through drawings, manipulatives, colours, sounds and movement. So these multiple and various experiences that we as teachers can use to develop pattern for our students. So drawings, manipulatives such as shapes, unifix, beads. So we might get our students to use colours like red, blue, red, blue, red, blue. We might develop sound patterns. We might get students in a circle at the front of our class and they could do clap, click, clap, click, clap, click. So they might do sound patterns. And then we might take them out onto the oval, for example, and do step, jump, step, jump, step, jump, creating these repeating patterns for students. So developing strong and rich understanding of pattern is really the bedrock for skip counting. So our goals when teaching pattern really are to utilise a range of different experiences to build an understanding of pattern, copying, creating, extending patterns to lay the foundations for skip counting success, and then use pattern recognition as an anchor to teach skip counting. So what we're trying to do here is really develop a strong understanding of pattern as a jumping off point for skip counting. So how does it look? We might have students have a blue-green colour pattern. They might use letters A, B, A, B, A, B. They might use shapes. They might have square, triangle, square, triangle, square, triangle. So the unit of repeat here is the square triangle. If we continue this pattern on, the unit of repeat would be square, triangle, square, triangle. It's also called the core. So unit of repeat or core. So after we've developed a strong understanding of pattern, we move into skip counting. So there's two different ways that we can look at skip counting: short call sequences and long call sequences. So our short call sequences are those sequences that students will remember without much effort. So if we look into the cognitive science research, we know that students can only hold probably about 3 or 4 pieces of information, 3, 4, 5 pieces of information. And these short call sequences really lend themselves to really quick success. So if we're looking and we're thinking about mathematics teaching and learning, we want to build student motivation. So motivation is built through success. It's like a snowball effect. The more success students have, the more inclined that they're going to want to engage with the learning. So the first thing we do is develop that understanding of pattern, get that success with the pattern. Then short call sequences, developing an understanding of short call, and then onto long call sequences. So we're going to focus on short call sequences to begin with. So your short call sequences are those sequences that students don't really have much trouble with remembering. So for example, your AB pattern 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. Or your ABCDE pattern. So 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and so on and so forth. Or your recurring A pattern of 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So these are your short call sequences that students will be able to get straight away without much thinking. So if we have a look at our short call ABCDE pattern, we know that ABCDE, an ABCDE pattern, is actually a twos pattern. So an A to E pattern is a twos pattern. A, B, C, D, E, A, B, C, D, E, A, B, C, D, E. What I'm trying to highlight here is that the real trick to understanding skip counting is linking it to pattern. So for example, if we see that we've got an A, B, C, D, E pattern, we know that's a 0, 2, 4, 6, 8 pattern, or a twos pattern. Once again, we can continue this pattern on to 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28. I hope what I'm trying to highlight here, I'm trying to get across, is that if we develop repeating patterns for our students, we can layer in skip counting sequences on top of that as an anchor to build knowledge. It's a really nice way to develop skip counting sequences. Here's another couple of short call sequences. We've got our fives pattern, so our A-B pattern, which is a fives pattern. 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50 is an A-B pattern. The way I like to explicitly teach is by saying that, okay, every second number, you're going to see a 5 in the ones column. It's going to be the B in the A-B pattern. A, B, A, B, A, B. 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55. You are guaranteed when you are looking at a fives pattern that the alternating number or the alternating digit in the ones column is going to be a 5. That's for that sequence. If we have a look at the A's pattern, the A is a recurring pattern where you have a 0 recurring in the ones column. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and so on and so forth. So these short call sequences, the sequences that don't really require a lot of cognitive work. Okay, you don't have to draw on any strategies, and you're not really thinking this super deeply about what's going on. So your short call sequences are those easier sequences that students can remember without much effort. Now your long call sequences, so for example your 7s and your 3s are really long call sequences because they don't have that unit of repeat that's short and sharp. It's a really long call. So for example, you've got 0, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, and then you're back to 30 again. You followed an A to J pattern. So let's have a look and unpack that a little bit further. So your long call sequences are those sequences that students aren't going to be able to remember through, for example, chants. They're not going to be able to remember them off by heart. And especially when you start at other numbers. So for example, if you were skip counting by 7 starting at 1, what chance do you think students are going to have? You know, your grade 2s, 3s, 4s. Are they going to be able to remember that whole call of the sequence, that long call sequence? I don't think so. So things to think about. Students won't learn how to skip count by 7s through chance because the core is just too long. Unless of course you're getting into the area of multiplication and you're starting to learn your facts. So that's a whole nother kettle of fish. But if we're, say for example, I was getting students to start up, say for example I said to them, all right, you're going to start at 1 and I want you to learn your skip counting sequence by 7s starting at 1, they're going to find that a little bit more tricky. So, or for example, if you're starting to skip count from 1 by 3s, they're going to find that a little bit more challenging. So the difference between what I'm trying to get across here is your short call sequences are easy to remember. Your long call sequences are a lot harder and a lot more cognitively taxing for students. So when students move to skip counting from numbers other than 0, they'll have nothing to draw on from their long-term memory because it is a lot more challenging. So what do you do? How do I go about teaching skip counting by 3s and 7s? Well, I start off by looking at additive strategies. So if I'm looking at 7s, I might build to 10 by breaking my 7 apart. So for example, 0, 7, all right, 7 and 3 is 10, and I've got 4 left over, I make 14. All right, I need to get to 20 from 14, so I add 6, and then I've got 1 left over, I get 21. 21 plus 7 is 28. All right, I need to get to 30. 28 plus 2 is 30, and I've got 5 left over, so that's 35. So you're constantly using that building to 10, you're constantly breaking up 7 into its composite parts. So for example, 3 and 4, 6 and 1, 2 and 5. So that's how I teach sevens. 3 is pretty similar. Adding to 3, knowing 3 plus 2 is 5, 3 plus 3 is 6. Knowing your 8 plus facts and your 9 plus facts are very important. So for example, 8 plus 2 is 10, plus 1 is 11. Or 9 plus 1 is 10, plus another 2 is 12. So having that understanding of your 8 plus facts and your 9 plus facts. So that's the difference between your short core and your long core sequences. And once they start to learn these strategies, they can start to apply them to different number sequences as well, which is the beauty of this. So the real thing that I'm trying to drive home today in this PD is for teachers to understand that, hey, your long core sequences are a bit harder to learn, and students aren't going to learn them as quickly as your short core sequences. All right, so moving on from long and short core sequences, we have to expose students to other different things when relating to skip counting to develop depth. So for example, ascending and descending patterns, identifying rules. So for example, 0, 2, 4, that's a +2 rule of a pattern. Identifying terms, for example, the fourth term in a skip counting sequence by 2s is 6. Identifying missing numbers. Okay, so for example, if I was to identify what the missing numbers were in this sequence, I would say, all right, the difference between 8 and 10 is 2. Therefore, we have 6 and 4. Took me a while to get there, got there. So the missing number sequences. So identifying, for example, the difference between 8 and 10 or 10 and 12, and then identifying what's missing because I know the rule of the pattern. And then also looking at patterns and thinking, all right, what is the core? What is the unit of repeat in the pattern? All right, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. That's the core of my pattern. That's the unit of repeat of my 2s pattern. So we also need to be exposing students to continuing forwards from odd and even numbers and backwards from odd and even numbers. And then also multi-directional, so starting in the middle and say, all right, can I skip count forwards and backwards from 4 and 6? All right, what's the pattern here? Oh, I think it might be a 2s pattern, and then you can you can go into negative numbers there as well. So a little bit more of a stretch and just developing depth for students. Another thing I like to do when I'm developing skip counting for my students is to categorize skip counting patterns. So for example, you might start off with like a T-chart. A T-chart would have, like, for example, here's a skip counting pattern by 2s. Here's not a skip counting pattern by 2s. So that example, non-example. So you got 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. All right, not a skip counting sequence by 2 is 0, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. So what you do is, I like to give my students a list of skip counting patterns and they have to categorize them. It's a really nice way for them to highlight examples and then non-examples of skip counting sequences. And then also extending on your T-chart, you could use a two-way table, which is on the left. You could have skip counting by 2s, not skip counting by 2s, and then you could have correct patterns and then has an error. So they're doing two-way categorizing. So categorizing whether a pattern is by 2s and not by 2s, and whether it's correct or it's incorrect. So what you're doing there is you're getting students to really look into pattern in terms of, skip counting in terms of their patterns. So they're categorizing and analyzing patterns. So that's a really nice way to develop depth. So a few things to think about there. Developing depth through categorizing and also continuing in different directions and also identifying different aspects of patterns. So a little bit of a review for you today. So start by building students' knowledge of pattern before skip counting sequences. Doing the short-term work will enable long-term success. So making sure that you develop strong understanding of pattern first before launching into skip counting. Use various experiences to build schema, so drawing sounds and shapes that help embed knowledge into long-term memory. Layer in short core sequences to connect to existing knowledge of pattern. So start off by developing that strong understanding of pattern and layer in the short core sequences. Successful fuel motivation. Don't teach chants for long call sequences, teach additive strategies. It's a lot easier to get some wins under your belt there. Develop depth through analysing patterns, analysing core, the missing numbers, the terms, etc. And get students to categorise patterns in different ways and use example, non-example pairs. All right, well, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the session, and I look forward to seeing you soon.